Welcome everyone to Legion Gaming. I'm your host Donnie, and as always, I'm joined by co-host Deucy.
Happy Halloween, everybody!
Happy Halloween! If you're listening to this on the live date, this is October 31st, and this is our special bonus episode, episode 72, Resident Evil.
72.
72. We
like
have to
the
emphasize
game
it. Yeah. We're covering Resident Evil today, which we've been waiting for this because this is one of the topics that when we started this podcast, we always talked about doing because this is genuinely one of our most favorite games in the history of games, and Deuce and I are both very excited to cover this one.
I would say it's in my top 5 games of all time.
I'd say
all systems, all eras.
Yeah, for me, I could say top 5, and it's always hard because I'd have to map out my top 5 because I know what definitely I'd put a couple in there, right?
Yeah.
But this could easily be top 5 without question. It's just hard without me thinking too hard about it, but anytime I think Resident Evil 2, I just get excited. I just think about all the times when we grew up with this game with you, myself, my brother, my friend Brandon, everyone else who played this game with us.
This game taught me, well, my friend and neighbor next door taught me to turn the PlayStation upside down.
Yeah.
And then this game was the first one I played where it finally loaded smoothly.
Yeah, for context, I got an early PS1. It was December 95. For Christmas is when I got that. And the early PS1 systems had a plastic cradle for where the laser rides, and that would warp. Or actually, it was a plastic piece that was holding the laser, I should say, and that would warp with the heat. So it slowed the loading time down. I eventually got a new PS1, sold mine to Deucy for I think it was like $75.
Yeah,
somewhere around
65
there.
or something like that.
Yeah, because the system brand new was like $150, $200. So I was like, well, you get this for half.
Yeah.
So Deucy had to deal with turning the system upside down so that it would load properly.
I didn't even know that right away, too.
Yeah.
I had it for, I don't know, weeks or a month or so, and I was just kind of suffering through the load times. Some games were better than others. I think there were some demo discs that you gave me, and I could load those up really quick and play. Resident Evil 2, though, man, those door loading screens.
Yeah.
I got really intimately well known to those doors.
And it's funny because until then, I knew I had the problem with that because my sister's friend's brother brought over Mega Man X4, and he played over my house, and he's like, why is it taking so long? I was like, I don't know. Like, it's the same system you have. Like, I was like 10 years old where it was 12,
Yeah.
so I didn't know what the issue was. So that kind of let me know that there might have been a problem, but I didn't know. I just figured that's what it was. And it wasn't until you told me, like, hey, I figured out you have to turn it upside down.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, so it's genuinely a defective issue. And they fixed it with the future PS1s.
It's hilarious that it just it was fixed by turning it upside down because it added pressure to the disc that like pushed it closer to the lens, I believe, or something like that.
It gave relief to the laser that was riding on the cradle. Because
Yeah.
what happens, like, when that laser moves, that cradle is warped, so I guess it would just slowly go across the disc to read it. I don't know the full technical issue of it. I just know it was obviously a problem.
Yep.
But nonetheless, you suffered through it to play Resident Evil 2 and a bunch of other games. So there's a lot of memories with Resident Evil 2, and this is a very important game to both of us, and we thought obviously it was perfectly appropriate for our sort of annual Halloween episode to celebrate more Resident Evil with Resident Evil 2. And we're also going to be covering a little bit about the remake too, because that is also directly related for obvious reasons to this, and there's also changes worth discussing on there too, both
for sure. I mean,
good and, for you, Deucy, bad in some ways.
Yeah.
I'm more indifferent to them, I would say.
It's like our last Halloween episode was Resident Evil and the GameCube remake, which was very much worth talking about. It was so exciting when 2 finally got a remake. But yeah, I do have my issues.
We do, yeah, which it's always good. We always like to be critical because I'd say we're constructively critical for the most part. We're not hyperbolically clowns, But it's also fun because this game was ported to a lot of different systems, and there's some interesting things to say about that. So I think this will be a really great episode, which, yes, I say that all the time because I think we always have a lot of fun in these episodes, and hopefully you're listening and enjoying just the same we are.
Yeah, we have been getting some listener feedback too that have said that we are doing a good job. So,
yeah, so
thank you everybody.
to Nick, Evan, everyone else out there is listening. We appreciate you chiming in and giving us bits and pieces because it's a fun time. We really enjoy doing these things, especially when there's a game that we love so much like Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, we were so excited that we flubbed the intro multiple times on this one.
Yeah. I'm blaming the weather and a whole kinds of things. There's other things I'm sure at play, but yeah, it took me like 3 tries to record. Deucy coughed. I had a brain fart. Deucy farted out of his mouth.
Yep.
It is what it is. Before we get to all the Resident Evil 2 goodness, Deucy, what have you been playing lately?
Resident Evil 3 instead.
There you go. For a future episode in a year from now, look forward to Resident Evil 3.
I had to finally finish it. I just beat the remake. I started it and beat it in the time between recordings right now.
Yeah, I told you it's really short because when I beat that during that was like prime pandemic time too. I think it came out like right within a few weeks of the everything shutting down. I went through it and it must have been like 8 hours tops. It wasn't very long, not in a bad way. It was just probably just fine where it didn't overstay its welcome necessarily.
Yeah,
but it was short but sweet, which is how the original game was too.
Yeah, I got this one done in 6 hours according to the clear time.
Okay, so maybe mine was closer to that because it wasn't very long.
Yeah, compared to 7 and 8, which were like 10 and 12 hours. But I actually enjoyed this. I know it has gotten so unfairly ripped on because there's just a bunch of people butthurt about like what they took out and what they did to it. But like when I think back to the original Resident Evil 3, which we'll talk about in a year, like, I don't mind not having to fight that giant worm. I don't mind not having to go to yet another generic rusty building.
Yeah, I think this game, a lot of people were critical of it. Some, fairly critical. Some just, again, hyperbolically critical, where you're just kind of crapping on everything because of what it is. I thought it was a great remake. I didn't think it was on the level of like the RE2 remake or even the original, right? But it's still a great game. It's still a great experience for the time you have with it. And I do like that they add the challenges, like those earnable points for doing certain things where you can unlock more weapons and skins and whatever. So it does have some replayability, but at the same time, like, I don't want them to lengthen this game because, like I said, the original Resident Evil 3 was short. So short that I beat it 9 times.
Yeah, to get all the epilogues.
To get the epilogue cards. Like, I eventually got my time down to probably like under 2 hours, somewhere around there. So I was fine with the choices they made in the remake. It's just for me coming off of, this was about a year after Resident Evil 2 remake. It's just such a high bar to kind of meet, but it's still a great game. I figured you would enjoy it once you got through it. It's kind of short but sweet and really good.
I feel like this could have been attached to the Resident Evil 2 remake as sort of like all one menu. You pick from the menu saying you want Leon's story, Claire's story, or Jill's story. Like they all feel like one thing. In fact, I was planning on playing this with 2, where like you get up to the point where Jill passes out and then a lot of time passes, and that is when Resident Evil 2 takes place. So I would switch over, play through Resident Evil 2, and then switch back to Resident Evil 3, all in one like timeline story. I didn't though, because I just wanted to beat this finally. This was the first time. I don't know why I stopped the first time. Like
it's probably just like anything else. Like anytime I say why I didn't finish the game, it's 99.9% is because I played something else. It took my attention away. Played something else on top of that, and it's just time goes away from us when we work 40 plus hours a week.
The first time I played it was in 2020. We were not working.
That's also true. I guess back then that's a different excuse. Yeah. Well, I know what it was. Probably Warzone, because we played that nonstop. For months.
Warzone and golf.
That's right, PGA 21.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We were playing a lot of stuff together online, which was cool. Like we all got to reunite online for the first time in years.
It was a while. Everyone was congregating for Warzone. But yeah, but anyway, like that's probably why you hadn't finished it. And then once you got to now, you're like, oh yeah, it's 6 hours. It's a weekend.
I told you before I started playing just last night, I was like, oh, I'm already back to the spot that I was in 2020. And then in one night, I beat the rest of it.
Yeah, I texted you. I was like, you're probably near the end then, because it's not very long. I'd say my biggest critique of that game is that Nemesis felt like he was so much less of a threat than the original game. And I'm sure part of that is because the original game was also clunky with tank controls. So you just, he's naturally more threatening, he's hunting you more often, it felt like in there. In here, you have so much mobility and like the dodge helps.
The dodge is a lot better than
and I'm sure it's harder on harder difficulties, but on normal, it just felt like he was such a pushover, even compared to Mr. X in the Resident Evil 2 remake.
The only thing is, like, me and dodging never have a good relationship in any game, because I watched a playthrough of this, and the person that was playing it was dodging so perfectly that he was knifing Nemesis just for fun, because it's a stream and he wanted to, mess around. When I went into it, I wasn't going to knife at all. I didn't have any intention to. But even just trying to shoot him normally, he would still get some good hits in on me. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm pushing the dodge button.
Yeah. I got used to dodging, plus I could kind of telegraph his attacks too. Like he's sometimes slow with his attacks. So it's like I knew where to run. So there's times where it's like I knew I didn't have to fight him, he would chase you a little bit. Like I just kind of did the old trope of, which we'll talk about in Resident Evil 2 when we get to it. Like sometimes you would just go through a door to avoid a battle or something.
You would just
with zombies,
or you would go into a room that you knew he would come into, and then stand on the other side of a table.
Yeah,
you're like, aha,
yeah,
this
so
table is
some of those tactics still work.
This table is your biggest obstacle ever.
Yeah. Is that the only you've been playing there, Deucy? Anything else?
No, really, that was it because, it's been kind of a short time between.
I know
between
we're recording a week apart, which is, we've done that when we first started. We were doing weekly episodes, which was crazy. But now it's a little bit different. It feels weird. I just saw you last week, so there's not like a whole lot has changed since then. But actually, I'm more impressed that you finished it within the week time from since I saw you. Yeah. Also, for future episodes, by the way, we should shout that out now since we're recording that today. Episode 73, which will be 1 week from today.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about some of our best and favorite launch games, which I think will be really fun because I don't know how I was talking about that. I think I was looking at a list of like PS2 launch games because that also celebrates the anniversary this week as of this recording.
Oh, wow.
25 years, which is crazy. And it got me thinking like Dreamcast and all those. So I thought it'd be fun if we went through some of the generations of games and consoles and the releases to see what launched with them and some of our favorites because it's a pretty fun little topic. So look forward to that in a week from now.
Yeah, we haven't done a what I like to call loosey goosey episode where we've been doing a lot of deep dives, which have been really great.
They've been really fun. Yeah,
but we haven't had any lists in a while.
The lists are helpful for me too because I'm not having to like dive in the notes for hours of the week. So it'll be fun. I think it'll be a nice little different change of pace because we've done a lot of deep dives the last few months, which is always good. Mm-hmm. For what I've been playing, I'm still playing Ghost of Yotei as of last week. I didn't realize this was broken up into acts, by the way, because I just got to Act 2, a couple nights ago. After
I think Tsushima was too.
It was. It's just I hadn't played in so long that I didn't realize this had the same sort of structure.
Yeah.
And it hit me because I was like 32 hours in. I was like, oh crap, this is Act 2. I'm just getting to now.
Oh my god.
So, yeah, because I've just been doing like so much side activities and. There's something about how this game is just organically engaging about the open world. I don't know what I can't pinpoint what it is. It's just I'm so into doing like the bounties on the side or like the bamboo things where you do a button combo and you get more spirit gauge. Everything has just been fun, and I've been seeking these things out.
The single small clip that has sold me on it. Well, I was always wanting to get it because I want to finish Tsushima too, but I watched somebody fishing with a spear.
Yeah.
The fish would jump out of the water and they would stab it.
And then you could cook the spear in your camp, or excuse me, cook the fish in your camp, and you get like a melee boost or another sort of buff.
That's hilarious and awesome.
It's pretty cool, but it's also funny because there's a mini game associated with it. You can skip, but you're using the DualSense gyro to like.
Oh, I think I've seen this too.
To cook the fish and flip it and everything.
Is there another mini game where you use the sense to like hammer metal?
Yeah, so if you want, when you upgrade when you go to your dad's forge, you can upgrade your weapons, and you can use the DualSense as sort of like a hammer, and then you hit a button to flip the the metal bar, and you also put it back in the fire to heat it back up again and hammer it.
Holy crap!
But again, it's all optional. Like you can skip it. It's just like it's just a distraction more than anything else. It's just you do it a few times, get your kicks out of it, and then from there you're just like, well, I just want to upgrade, so skip, right? But it's fun. Like there's also these activities where the Sumi-E paintings, which I forgot if they were in the first game. I think they had haikus in the first game. This is sort of the parallel to that.
Oh, okay.
So you now use the touchpad to draw things. So it's like it has a piece of parchment paper on the screen. And it's like super basic. It just says like, trace this. It's like a dotted line.
Oh, and they tell you what to draw?
Yeah, so you just paint like a wolf setting or something.
That's probably safer than having a bunch of penises out there.
Yeah, exactly. Someone taking photos of it. Yeah. But again, like the slice has been so engaging that this might be like my parallel to Vito's Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, where it's just
you're gonna be spending months on this.
Yeah,
thing.
like I was like Act 2. Like I've done so much. It's been 30-something hours. So obviously, I'm very much engaged with this game. I love it. It's definitely top 10 for the year whenever we get to that episode. So I've been diving into that, and also I just got Ninja Gaiden 4, which you saw me play a few minutes of when you got here, Deucy, and it's by Platinum Games and Team Ninja, and Platinum Games, which you're more familiar with like Nier Automata, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, which is also a favorite of mine, and they just do these really heavy action games that are also heavily exaggerated. So Ninja Gaiden and Platinum Games is like a perfect marriage of like the action game kind of genre. This also reminds me of like the PS2 Shinobi game, just in terms of like how the levels are kind of structured, like these really confined corridors and whatnot, and like a lot of enemies to dispatch.
My first thought was Castlevania Lords of Shadow, the first one.
Oh yeah,
that was also very narrow.
Yeah, it's similar
narrow
to that.
In a forest.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool here because you play as Yakumo, which I cannot shake my mind to separate it from Giacomo, like the Italian name, because the way they say it just sounds like Giacomo, and I don't know what it is. It's just dumb. But it's this takes place in sort of like a futuristic Tokyo. It's kind of like a Neo Tokyo.
Yeah, everything I saw you like cutting up was bleeding, but also looked like a robot.
They were kind of cybernetic,
Yeah.
but it's cool because the story is similar to like the original Ninja Gaiden, that it kind of or reiterates, where it's like, you know, the Dark Dragon or like the ancient dragons coming up or to be summoned to take over the world kind of thing.
Again?
Yeah, right. But that's the whole thing. It's like a prophecy that keeps repeating itself, right?
Like Dracula.
Yeah, exactly. Just like Dracula, yeah. And they also reference Ryu Hayabusa, and you also plays him later in the game, which is interesting because he's on the cover and he doesn't appear till way later in the game. I don't know what that's about. But it's cool because it's like a futuristic version of the earlier tales. There's some remix music from even the Nintendo, which I thought was really cool.
Oh, nice.
It's hard to catch, but it's like it sounds like really like an orchestra did it, and it's super cool so far.
The first part I saw when I walked in were those weird little flying guys with the pointy beak faces. And
yeah, like the Tengu.
And I was like trying to think of did the previous trilogy or this one ever like use enemies from the Nintendo trilogy and just made them more modern and
they
and
probably
better looking?
did, but I can't point out any examples.
These guys kind of reminded me of those. I mean, in the Nintendo games, they were just literally birds attacking you.
Yeah.
But these reminded me of that.
I think that's the idea. Like, I would assume that the Nintendo ones are also like those Tengu. I guess they're mythological beings or something like that. But yeah, the wings and like the long nose mask and everything.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's somewhat related to that, because I'm sure this has those sort of Easter eggs and references to the original game. So basically, if you like Ninja Gaiden, if you like Platinum Games, like you'll love this because it's just a really gorgeous version of that. Super stylized. Combat's really good. It's the parry window is very tight from my notice, so there's a little bit of a skill gap there, which I think is great, but it's also challenging at the same time.
Going to be frustrating for me.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. I'm curious when you get to this,
Yeah.
how you'll feel, because you're always like you're a different barometer for me for these action games, where it's like I love this kind of stuff, whereas like some other games where they're really difficult, I might kind of shun off of them at some point. But like Ninja Gaiden, Devil May Cry, Stellar Blade, all those, I'm just like full bore into them. No matter how many times I die, I have to retry.
I've at least beaten a lot of the first ones. Like I've beaten Ninja Gaiden on Xbox, and I beat Devil May Cry 1 and stuff like that. And then the sequels, I don't know, I fall off not because of difficulty. Like Ninja Gaiden 2, I think I got all the way to the end, but then like one of the last bosses was really difficult. But I also feel like it's just a lot of the same for me. And when I even saw this one, I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely Ninja Gaiden.
yeah, like it definitely has these signatures. And then again, like you have the crazy over the top cutscenes that Platinum Games are known for. Like I just thought of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance so much when I was playing through some of the early levels, and like just some of the things you have to do. I was like, yeah, this feels like when you're kind of riding Metal Gear Ray with Raiden and slicing it in half or something crazy, right? So it's a great time. I think if you love Ninja Gaiden, you'll probably just enjoy this all the same, because it also got me thinking, like, holy crap, there's been so many ninja and like samurai games this year I've been playing, and like I've been loving all of them. Like Assassin's Creed Shadows, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, Ninja Gaiden 4, Shinobi. It is just a fantastic year for that.
I got you interested in Mark of the Ninja.
Mark of the Ninja again. I had that's like a different flavor of ninja. That's really fun, more stealth based.
Yep.
So it's been just a great year for ninja games. So I'm always excited about that.
I'm glad this is on Game Pass, because I'm sure it's difficult, and I wouldn't want to spend like money on it yet. I want to give it a nice try first.
There might be like an easy mode. I haven't checked, because I think when I started, like, you just had normal and hard, and I just picked normal because I know hard is just going to be, that's something you do after you beat the game, like.
wasn't the easy mode in the original trilogy like something like dog mode or something
they
like that?
called it Ninja Dog.
Yeah.
And they also would put a pink bracelet on you to almost like make fun of you, which they don't do that these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's also, RIP to Tomonobu Itagaki, because he was sort of like the outlaw of action games back then, where like he was just kind of, what's the word we're looking for? Like disparaging to people who would complain about difficulty, right? Where that's why they made Ninja Dog. Like, he would put like a pink bracelet, almost like a scarlet letter, to shun you for playing on easy mode on one of his games. But it's a fun time. It's difficult, but again, that's like Ninja Gaiden to a T, even going back to Nintendo.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Deucy. I think it's time to venture back into Racoon City for the second time. All right, Deucy, we are here once again talking about Resident Evil, one of our favorite franchises ever.
once again, we've stepped into the world of survival horror.
Yes, and it's another. This one is a huge one. This came out January 21st, 1998. It has a very interesting history on its own, which, I'm sure if you listen to this podcast, you might already know some of the history about Resident Evil 1.5, and we'll talk about that here too. It's an interesting story that paid off because I think had they not trashed and by trash I mean like completely given up on Resident Evil 1.5, I don't know if we'd be talking about Resident Evil in the same regard we would be today.
I mean, the semi-built version that has come out recently looked okay. But I think this definitely was the better way to go because of just like the character building that they did and the connections that they made. I don't think 1.5 was really going to connect with the first game all that much.
It was kind of meant to, but again, it's like they were 67% done, and we'll get into the details of it too here. But it's really the big difference maker is he hired a story or screenwriter, which to me at least, reading upon this, just made a huge difference for Resident Evil 2 because without him, even the director, it was Hideki Kamiya, who we talked about very recently with like Devil May Cry. He even said that or I think it was Mikami as well. They both said that we're glad we hired the screenwriter because it made us realize how immature our abilities were as far as writing.
Ah, yes.
So it's interesting that that was a product of them dumping Resident Evil 0.5. We're saying this was not good enough, and we acknowledged it, which doesn't happen. I mean, it can happen nowadays, but it's a bigger risk. A lot of developers and publishers don't want to scrap a game entirely because they're so focused on releasing it on time.
There's also the the publishers with their egos.
That's really the big thing is the publishers. Yeah, the publishers look, we're investing money in developing this. You need to run it on our time more or less. So it's amazing that this story even happened because it led to the creation of one of the greatest games ever.
Do you think they still didn't have that much confidence in it because it released in January of a year, and that's usually the dead zone?
Well, I think at that point they just were like, we need to release this.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where it's like
we missed Christmas.
Yeah, we missed Christmas. It's been delayed for over a year already because we'll talk about when it was supposed to come out, and they're like, we just need to get this out. It doesn't matter when it is. And it's crazy because this did come out January 21st, 1998. And 1998 is widely known as one of the greatest years in gaming. I got a little bit of a list here, so I'll go through some. There's the original Baldur's Gate on PC, Fallout 2, Zelda Ocarina of Time, Half-Life, Metal Gear Solid, StarCraft, Gran Turismo in the US. This came out May 1998 for us. It was December 97 in Japan. Yeah, the first game.
Damn.
I feel like that was an earlier game for me too, but it wasn't. It was 98.
Yeah.
Banjo-Kazooie, F-Zero X, Marvel vs. Capcom, Tekken 3, Wario Land 2, and a couple of my favorites, Xenogears, Panzer Dragoon Saga, which I haven't played. I just consider that in my favorites because it wasn't like a Half-Life level game, but it was still significant for its own sort of purposes. And then one big one for us that we're dying to get back to that they'll never bring back to see, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six.
This, when I read this part, I was like, wow, that was huge 98?
Yeah.
That's the first one on PC, right?
That's the original PC game.
Damn.
Yeah.
I could have sworn that was a little earlier too.
I thought that was like a 97 game, but same time, it's been so many years that I tend to blur those things.
I picked up the novel shortly after I got the game, and it was one of the first Tom Clancy novels that I finished, read all the way through. It's a beefy one, but it was so interesting, and it actually, the game follows the novel pretty well. But I could have sworn that was earlier. It must have been when I was just about into high school.
Just about getting into high school at that point, yeah. Because the Rogue Spear, that came out within a year of the first game too, I think. So I know that time frame. For me, actually, I know it was 98 because my buddy got me into Rainbow Six, and I met him in spring 98. So I know that's sort of my milestone marker at that point was okay, Rainbow Six was definitely 98 because, beyond the fact that it sells as 98.
I don't even know what got me to get that. Maybe I saw you.
I borrowed it from him. So we might have played it at my house, and we did the whole planning gimmick with Ding Chavez and all that.
Yeah.
So that game probably sold. I'm sure playing it at my house on my crappy PC probably sold it because you'd have a better PC than mine.
Mine was barely better.
It was barely better. It ran this better at least.
If something was see-through, my computer did not let you see through that.
No transparency effect.
Yeah.
It's like a Saturn.
Yeah.
It's like a Sega Saturn, yeah. So Resident Evil 2, the original development started with series creator Shinji Mikami. He moved to a producer role at this point. Hideki Kamiya was directing this one, which again we've mentioned in our previous episode, which you should listen to. He directed Devil May Cry. He's done a lot of other games like Beautiful Joe, Bayonetta, Okami, Wonderful 101. Just a very legendary director, producer.
Was this the first one he ever directed?
I don't know if this was the first. I'm not sure. It might have been actually because back before this, he was I think he was designer and planner, and this might have been the first foray into directing.
He worked on the first one, right? But it wasn't in a
I think he was like an art
just a
designer for
programmer
that.
or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. So he was selected to direct this one, and Mikami and Kamiya would actually clash over creative disagreements, and this is what led to Mikami taking over the directing role, and Mikami would be an overseeing producer. So he was kind of like overseeing the project, how it's going, make sure everything's keep on track. And it's fun because this group who would develop this game within Capcom would eventually become Capcom Production Studio 4, which, again, we talked about Devil May Cry. So, really, this is the same people who gave us Devil May Cry 3 years later. It's pretty incredible. And this game actually started out very different than what it ended up. It's what's widely known as Resident Evil 1.5. This was actually shown in summer 1996 at a Japanese festival called V-Jump. So, this started with... actually, it was supposed to come out in May 1997, which... Damn. Again, yeah, that's about a year after the original game, because I think Resident Evil 1 was like March or April 96. I can't remember at this point. It was somewhere within the summer, I want to say. I don't think it was closer to fall.
No.
So 2 months after they finished developing Resident Evil 1, they immediately started Resident Evil 2, which, again, this is going to be a little confusing because we're talking about Resident Evil 1.5 in this instance, so maybe we'll refer to it as 1.5. And in this version, Leon S. Kennedy was introduced, and he was essentially the same version as he is in Resident Evil 2. And then they have a character that you probably have seen over time called Elza Walker. She's actually a skin option for Claire in the remake, which I thought was a great little Easter egg that they added. She was supposed to be this motorcycle riding college student who was vacationing in her hometown of Racoon City, which... what a hell of a thing to come back to.
Yeah.
You're in college, you go back to your hometown, it's overrun with zombies because of some viral outbreak, and you're just trying to vacation, and it's like the worst thing you could possibly imagine. So she was initially slated to be sort of the Claire parallel in this version in Resident Evil 1.5. The paths of both characters actually weren't meant to cross in this version, and each actually had 2 support characters. So Leon was supposed to get help from Marvin and Linda, who would later become Ada Wong, which we'll talk about. Elza would be helped by Sherry, which we'll talk about, and John, who appears later as Robert Kendo as the gun shop owner. So he was supposed to have a larger role in this game.
Because that's... I think... No, never mind. The reporter is Ben.
Yeah, the guy in the prison. Yeah, he's a totally different character.
Yeah.
And whenever I think John, I think of Ada's, I guess we'll call him boyfriend.
Yeah.
Who was later sort of folded in the plot as far as like getting her close to Umbrella.
He was in the first game, sort of. Like, his notes were...
Yeah. So he's like loosely related to this whole thing. Mikami also mentioned that in this game, at least when they showed it early in 96, is that they were planning to have more on-screen enemies at once, maybe 7 or more, and this is kind of reinforced these sort of chaos and terror of swarming monsters.
They sort of kept that in the second one.
They did, which aids a lot, because even the first game, I'd say like you probably wouldn't see more than 2 or 3 zombies at once, maybe 2 or 3 hunters at once. It was really loose, but again, it was such a different experience that it still was scary as hell because you didn't know how to negotiate those kind of things. But this game definitely ramps everything up to where there's more zombies on the screen at once, and it's pretty crazy how often it...
I mean, this makes way more sense also in Resident Evil 3 because it's just the townspeople and the cops and everybody that were trying to survive. They huddled together and then they got infected. Whereas in the mansion, in the mansion, they shouldn't have had as many zombies as they did because, like, why are there that many people at a residence?
Yeah.
I know there were scientists in the lab, but like they should have all been in the lab.
Where did you come from? Yeah. Was this like a hot day? Like all of you were just working? It was a good working Monday or something?
Yeah.
And they had the most staff on hand?
Were there that many staff people for like one guy's house?
I would guess like Umbrella was such a big company, and they probably figured like they could cover Racoon City. I don't know what the idea could be, but they're a big pharmaceutical company. I'm sure they could pull a lot of strings or something.
Yeah.
So this game, another thing I guess we talk about as far as like adding more screens, adding more aims on the screen at once, was that they actually had to reduce the poly counts for the character models. So they probably would have looked a little bit worse because it's a bit of give and take, right? Like you only have so much polygons on the screen at once, and if you dedicate to having like 7 to 10 enemies on the screen at once, that obviously is going to take some polygon counts for your character model. So they're probably going to look a little bit worse.
Not to mention, like, once you start the action and you shoot, there's like blood pixels.
Yeah, that's right. There's other effects going on at once. So it almost seemed like it was a little bit too ambitious for what they wanted. Like they're trying to make this a bigger sequel in every way, but it's also costing them visual fidelity at the same time. So as they were going on and create this, Mikami kind of believed that the assets were good, but they did not combine themselves to make a great game, which I think is a pretty powerful thing to do as a creator because, for us, like whenever we do anything, like as far as like if we're creating arts or even when we're doing the podcast, we're like overly critical about what we're working on. And I think it takes a lot to say, all right, you know what, like I got to restart this. Some of this is good. There are pieces here that I think I can work with, but no matter how I fit them together, it's just not working.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point Mikami got to, because when they were about 60 to 80% done with Resident Evil 1.5, they scrapped the entire thing. Now, mind you, Capcom's like, well, we have a game to release.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Like, you guys are being pretty bold with this game that was supposed to come out May 1997. It's not happening. Now you're talking about rebooting the entire game. And I guess, we're fortunate that Capcom had the trust in Mikami and his team to do that, because, like we just said, a lot of publishers are like, no, like, finish the game. Like, no matter what, I mean, we put so much money into this, you're 60 to 80% complete. Like, you just get to the finish line. So I think it's amazing that Capcom, or whatever heads at the time, were confident of saying, like, look, we understand why this game isn't good. They probably listened to Mikami and like what his reasons were, and they said, all right, well, you're right, let's just delay it. And it's interesting because in the midst of delaying it, they'd released a DualShock version of Resident Evil. I think it was the director's cut, actually.
Yeah.
The first game, right?
Both. I think they did the director's cut and then
the DualShock was after.
DualShock, yeah.
Yeah. So as sort of, we're sorry for this taking so long. The sequel you've been greatly anticipating. They put a small team together to rework Resident Evil director's cut.
Now, mind you, this was only a delay of a year, and the game was about to come out a year after the first one. Meanwhile, it's been how many decades since we've had Grand Theft Auto 5 to 6?
Let's see, 2013,
yeah.
right? GTA 5, yeah.
And there's no apology for that. They're just like, yeah, it's going to happen when it happens.
I saw someone make a joke because as we're recording here just yesterday, they announced that Halo's coming to PS5.
Oh, yeah.
And someone said, wow, we're getting Halo on PS5 before GTA 6.
Yeah.
I thought that was really great.
And over here, they're like so sorry for the minor delay that they're going to re-release Resident Evil 1 a couple times.
Yeah, exactly. It happened at least twice. I don't know when DualShock Edition came out. Retro's cut DualShock Edition, I should say. But yeah, it's in the midst of, in between, basically May 97 and January 98 when Resident Evil 2, the actual Resident Evil 2 was going to release. Yeah, they gave us a game that's sort of like, we're sorry. And also, one of the versions also had a demo for Resident Evil 2. That was also sort of the dangling carrot saying like, look, it's coming. Here's a little taste of it.
Was it a demo for the current one?
Current 2, yeah. There's they were not yet.
They never released
1.5 was scrapped. Like, by the time they switched to full on what would become Resident Evil 2, like they had scrapped everything in Resident Evil 1.5.
I think I've heard that even that demo is different than the final 2. Like, it's got Leon and Claire and stuff, but there's a lot of stuff
I'm sure there is. I'm sure
changed and tweaked.
Yeah, I'm sure it's almost like, it's a really, really early build, and they probably just, pressed it on a CD with the director's cut and said, here you go. Like, here's a taste of what's coming in, 7-8 months.
I'd be interested in playing that.
I would, actually. I don't think I have that on my copy, actually. I'm not sure. I have to seek that out. I think it's the 2-disc director's cut, which I don't have. But yeah, it'd be interesting to check that out. Or I'm sure it's probably downloadable on a ROM or something, too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure. So Resident Evil 1.5 was dumped, and many of the assets could not be recycled because the final game's areas were, at least for Resident Evil 2, they decided that they went with more of like a Western influence for the buildings, and everything was extravagant and artistic, which was sort of the opposite of what Resident Evil 1.5 was. To my understanding, Resident Evil 1.5 had a lot of things like in the RPD. It was sort of like confined to a certain area, like it wasn't so much around the city of Raccoon. But they realized that when they dumped Resident Evil 1.5 and switched to what would become final Resident Evil 2, they said, like, we can't use pretty much any of this stuff. Like, we have to change how this game is from the ground up. And that's what happens when they introduced, what's his name here? It's Sugimura. His name is Noboru Sugimura, which we talked about previously in Onimusha. He was a writer for that as well. So all these people are kind of connected in Capcom in some way with all these games that we played. And he was the one who sort of completely reworked the entire story of Resident Evil 2, and he basically convinced Mikami and Kamiya to say, like, look, like if this is what we need for the story of the game, and we're gonna have to replan this entire game from the ground up. So that makes sense why they won't use Resident Evil 1.5. And I think they were better off from it, because it's like, if you're gonna do a full sort of reboots and sort of redesign this whole game, like, just start from the ground up if you have the time, because I'm sure they examined it and were like, well, we could use some of the assets, but they might spend time reworking those assets anyway, so it's better off just to start from scratch, more or less. And actually, this game was intended to be the end of the series, which I find incredible, because we're 20-something years later, almost 30 years since the first game, and we have so many Resident Evil games, including Resident Evil 9 next February.
Yeah, 9 coming shortly.
Yeah. And then it wasn't this, and again, this is another big name at Capcom we've talked about in the past. Yoshiki Okamoto, who worked on Street Fighter 2, Final Fight, and he was a big producer. He thought the story was too conclusive, so that's when he convinced Mikami to be like, no, like we can make this like I don't want to say multiverse because that's like the popular word now, but he thought that they can make it sort of like a series that could spread on these self-contained stories, which sort of like what Resident Evil 3 was.
That's also kind of what they're doing now. Like 7 and 8 are more self-contained, and they still have Chris in there to say, "Hey, part of the universe."
Exactly right. So I think he had the right thought, and also when you were thinking in a business sense, like, well, that means we could release more games. We could reuse the assets, the engine, whatever, and we can make more money because this doesn't have to end it too.
I mean, yeah, I don't see how they thought 2 was going to be the end when like 1 did so well that they greenlit a second one that quick.
Yeah.
How did you not think that 2 wasn't going to do well enough to greenlight a 3?
Exactly. And it's all, again, it's crazy because they probably would have liked to have rushed 2 out because it's like you want to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
And instead they rebooted the whole thing, which again worked out for the better. So at this point, this is when they hired Sugimura. He was initially supposed to be sort of a consultant, but he impressed Okamoto so much that he was offered the job to write the entire story for RE2. And in a 1998 developer review I found, he was talking about some of the problems with 1.5, and he said, it was all too realistic. The ominous atmosphere from the first game as represented in things like the Spencer Mansion itself, the armor room, key items like the jewelry box and gemstones, all that had been removed. The police station, too, had been changed to a very modern building. As a result, everything felt too modern and strangely sterile. He said, this doesn't feel like Resident Evil. Of course, wiping the slate clean and going back to zero on a project that's already 70% complete is no mean feat. And in that sense, I think it was a very brave move on the part of the developers, which I completely agree with because these could have been 2 very different games and we could be having 2 very different conversations if they went with 1.5.
The not feeling like Resident Evil is very weird. Like, to see what comes up in like 5 and 6, and you're like... And here they were so worried that they rebooted an entire like development.
Yeah.
But like it not feeling like Resident Evil, I think I would have been fine with like the police station actually looking like a police station because they had to explain it in a note that like, oh, this was a former art museum and now it's the RPD. It's like, why? Why would a city do that?
Yeah. But I guess, in that respect too, though, I would say like that roots it further into Racoon City's history, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have a museum, it's naturally going to have some sort of history with the city and everything else. So I think that's sort of, I don't know if that was their intent. That's what I was thinking about, though. It's like they have this museum which represents Raccoon's history. And now they have a police station there, which is supposed to be like serving and protecting, sort of like the history of Raccoon City, which at the end of this game won't even exist at this point. Yeah. Raccoon City just does not exist. It's pretty crazy. So that'll be my narrative thread for that too. But at the same time, like it's hard to say what Resident Evil 1.5 would have been when even he says like it just felt sterile. And it's hard to say because we can't judge that for ourselves because we have prototype builds that we see now, and it's like, yeah, it's unfinished, it's clearly not done. So it's hard to say like, well, we don't know what it would have been like, right? Because
of course it's sterile in those because they weren't finished.
It wasn't done. Yeah. So at this point, when Sugimura took over of the story, he realized that the dev team really didn't have sort of like a story planner necessarily. Like he just felt like the team wasn't unified. So that's when he collected like all the documents and basically, I think, sort of like established all the lore of the game to say like, here's our united front, and this is sort of our North Star to work towards, because that will actually help everybody on the development team once they have sort of a clear goal in mind and what they're trying to accomplish. At this point, Sugimura rewrote the entire story, and Elza getting cut in favor of Claire because they wanted to create a continuity thread with the original game, which I think is a great choice.
That was the smartest
It's
one.
brilliant because Claire in this game is meant to be finding her brother, who she knows is sort of missing, and you find out he's sort of as Marvin describes in the remake, he's vacationing in Europe, which means he's actually out to find Umbrella in Europe. But it's interesting that Claire is sort of that loose thread to the story, which I think is great because that does add weight to the story where it's like she has her own reason for being there.
It got me interested in the first one because we all know I played this one first, but to hear her constantly talk about Chris and then somebody will bring up, like outside of the game, somebody will say, oh yeah, he was in the first game. I'm like, oh, I got to play this prequel now.
Yeah. And that's actually true too, because by then I'm sure Resident Evil Director's Cut was greatest hits. So it's like, well, if I hadn't played the first, now I have a reason to, and it's only $20 to do so. Which I think is, great. And I think it makes perfect sense. So I want to talk about the zapping system, but we'll get to that, I think, when we talk about the meat of the game, when we get into like reviews and stuff, because the zapping system is one of the craziest innovations at this time that I didn't fully understand when we were kids. So I think it'll be a great thing to talk about there. We'll get into the story real quick here. So because of the zapping system, which has alternate scenarios based on the character you're playing as, for instance, like when you start as Leon, as technically scenario A, when you beat it as Leon in your first run, you unlock Claire B, and vice versa. Claire has the Claire A scenario, you unlock Leon B. And what this really means is that the story is more fleshed out because they both have these intersecting points in the story. And it's interesting because in the A scenario for each, you'll kind of see things that were happening in parallel to their respective B scenarios, which, I'm new to these games in 1988. I'm only like 13 years old. To me, that was like one of the more mind-blowing aspects of the game. So,
for sure, for me too.
Yeah, right. And once we discovered, like, holy crap, like there's a whole other game pretty much, even though it's the same game. But the story for this, as a result, is a lot more robust. So we'll do our best to sort of explain here because these things, the story, while mostly the same between Claire and Leon, they do have different beats and characters that they interact with.
It's weird too that like when it was advertised, they would say or sell the B story as like, oh, this is just a harder version of the story.
It's like a New Game Plus, but not.
Yeah, and what they didn't really go into was the fact that it was happening concurrently. So like when Leon and Claire meet up in a hallway, you have been coming from like maybe door A, and obviously Claire came from door B on the other side of the map. And then when you play in her scenario, now you're in that other room and you come from door B and meet up with Leon again. And sure, there's the same dialogue in those parts, but that's what was great to me about it was like, oh, this is what has been happening.
Mm-hmm. It's great because, you could play this on the A scenario and just be totally satisfied.
Yeah.
But if you want to, when you play on B, you also get the introduction of Mr. X and like all these other, I think there's a few other extra enemies. I can't fully recall.
There's extra story beats that I forgot, like the helicopter crashing into the building only happens in B.
Yeah.
But in A, you've already seen it happen. Like there's a flaming helicopter in a hallway.
Yeah, so it's great because you get to see that happening. Like it's because whenever you play a game, it's always crazy when you see something that's already occurred, like a plane crash or something, or a helicopter crash. And sometimes you wonder, like, you might see a note or something, you might kind of put together what might happen.
Yeah.
But it's a different story when you get to play through that game entirely and then play through a second time, and you actually see that event unfold, which just adds more impact to the story because now you're seeing more of the historical context for what happened to Racoon City. It's really brilliant.
Yeah.
I think we take it a little bit for granted nowadays because I don't think many games do this too often.
Nothing else really has since then. I don't know what the heck they did.
You know what kind of does, and I still have to play through it, Silent Hill F.
Oh, nice.
It's interesting because, like I mentioned to you, like I beat it once, but that game's actually meant to be played at least 2 or 3 times to get the full ending because even when you start on New Game Plus, even the first cutscenes are different. Like there's a little bit more context to setting up to the story, which I was shocked about. I was like, oh crap, like this is almost like Resident Evil B, but not in the sense like, plays like a second character. There's not like a totally different sort of, pathway to certain objectives that you would do in Claire or Leon B. But it's still there. But in general, like it's so infrequent. Like not many games do that where you have to repeat playthroughs to get the full story. I just think that is, I'm sure it's not an easy way to develop it, but I think that's a great way to extend the game where it's like, well, maybe it's 6 to 8 hours, but I could play through it again, and now I've doubled the game, or maybe at least lengthen it where I have to play through multiple times.
Now, to confuse people even further, is Leon A, Claire B, and Claire A, Leon B are 2 different stories that aren't the same canon. Like, if that makes sense. Like, if you start with Leon, Claire B will match that story, but not Leon B or Claire A. Like those are separate ones, and it's up to you to kind of plot what you want to be canon for the whole series.
Exactly,
because Leon meets Ada and the reporter Ben, no matter if it's in A or B scenario, and then Claire meets the police chief and little Sherry, and no matter if it's A and B. The only thing that changes is when you're in B, Mr. X comes to chase you. But, those things are always going to happen on one side of the coin or the other.
And it's interesting because, like you said, all those are technically canon in some way.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're not happening... Like, realistically, you probably would think, like, Leon or Claire, that would be happening in some other situation. But because of how the game unfolds, they're technically running the same pathway, but they're having different stories that still add to the whole story. Mm-hmm. So really, you kind of have to play this game 4 times, maybe, to kind of get the idea of the story. So we're going to go through it in broad strokes here because we could, you and I can make a whole episode just on the story, I think. Unraveling all the lore bits, unraveling all the other motivations going on.
I will like to point out, like, back in the day, there was the novelization by S.D. Perry.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
And this one was a really fun one to read because I think it went, like, the Leon A, Claire B story, but then there were some parts where, like, Leon still had to be the superhero and stuff like that. And so it took from both of them.
Yeah.
But it worked as a novel.
Yeah, and those novels, they're not gonna win like what like Pulitzers or something. I don't know what the awards are, right?
Yeah.
They're just for me as a teenager, like they were just great reads. Like I didn't read a whole lot when I was a kid, unfortunately. Like I read, but not as much as I probably should have. Those were easy for me to read. I read through like all 5 or 6 of them because they were just digestible, 100-something pages. They were relatable to me. So they're fine. I think you can probably find a summary online if you want, but they're fun reads because it's sort of like, they're novelization like a movie or something where it's like it's largely follows the plot, but it also adds different things there. And they're not technically canon, but they're still a little bit more fleshed out.
They added like extra secretive characters and stuff that weren't ever in any of the games or movies.
Yeah.
So it was their own little universe that was fun to follow along in.
Yeah. All right, Deucy. So let's see. I guess we'll start with like Leon, and we'll kind of talk about this in broad strokes because again, like there's so much going on. So when you start the game, Leon S. Kennedy is basically his first day. He's a rookie cop. He's in Racoon City. So this is also post Resident Evil 1 after the mansion crisis has happened. Now that T-virus outbreak that occurred in the mansion is now taking over the entire city. And as soon as you get into the city, there's like a semi-accident. There's like a flaming semi-truck in the middle of the streets. Zombies everywhere. So this game immediately kicks off with a whole different atmosphere than the haunting mansion of the first game where you're being chased into the mansion, essentially.
Yeah.
This is now spread to an entire city, and there's really no survivors. There's very few survivors, I should say.
Actually, you kind of get chased into the city as well. Like, Leon stops and there's some people eating another person out in the middle of the street.
That's true.
And like my first instinct would be, okay, I'm gonna do a U-turn and leave immediately.
Yeah, but he's a cop. He's like, I'm gonna do. He's probably got that rookie cop bravado, where he's like, this is my job. I'm gonna serve and protect.
This is my town now.
Yeah. So he sort of he arrives in the city more or less, and he sees that there's obviously a crisis unfolding. You do interact with Claire on his scenario too, where like she's in parallel to this, arriving in Racoon City on a motorcycle. And it's cool because she also has that jacket. I think it's, what does it say on the back? Like heaven,
Made in Heaven?
Made in Heaven or something like that. Yeah, which I think
is what Chris has.
Chris has on his bomber jacket, which again, it's cool that they have a narrow thread to connect those two.
Yep.
So you basically arrive to this city. Leon and Claire interact, and they're kind of like figuring out what's going on because they're both basically just blind into this thing. Eventually, you make it to the police station. And, you think a police station is like the safest place to be during an outbreak, but it's not the case because most of the staff there have now been infected. And Leon's scenario, you come across Marvin, who's his cop. He's been bitten. He kind of, rounds up to Leon what's been happening. And basically at this point, you kind of have to escape the RPD because zombies have overtaken it. They inform you that there's sort of an underground sewer line to get through there.
Yeah, that always sounds safe.
I know, yeah. Under the museum. This is a previous museum, by the way. And now you have to go under there. You fight like this big old alligator. Other characters introduced throughout this sort of point in the game where you now find out about William Birkin. He's a research scientist at Umbrella. He's behind the G virus, which is now a worse version of the T virus from the previous game. Because again, Umbrella here is a pharmaceutical company who's really their business is trying to make bioweapons, and this is supposed to make the ultimate bioweapon. Umbrella sends, and again, this is all in the middle of this happening in parallel, and sort of even before the game, they send a bunch of, I guess what we would call them like shock troopers. I don't know what the hell they would be.
They're like
kind of like mercenaries, I guess.
Kind of, yeah, actually, because that's why there's the mercenaries mode.
Yeah,
but they're like Umbrella's own personal ones. Like
they're probably hired through some agency or something like that, or they probably pay them. But they're there to basically take the G virus from William. So in the midst of this happening, William injects himself with the G virus to sort of keep it out of Umbrella's hands, which doesn't really work. And also one of the cutscenes in the beginning of the game as well shows that a rat starts consuming the G virus because after he injects himself, he kind of drops like one of the vials. And
the rats get into the T virus. That's
why, it's the T virus? Okay.
That's why they're going through the city.
Oh, okay, got it. So it got that backwards. Excuse me. So the G virus is way worse. So throughout the game, you'll also see a transformed William. And then you also meet Annette Birkin, who's related to this whole story. She is William's wife. And also related to her is Sherry Birkin, which you meet on Claire's story. And Sherry, you actually play as her, which sucks to say the least, because she's like 10 years old or something.
She
and
never carries a gun or a knife.
She can't defend herself.
You really have to dodge everything.
You dodge everything, go to these nooks and crannies. And in the middle of all this too, you find out that Sherry has a sample of the G-Virus in her locket, which is also what Umbrella is after, and William in some sense.
That is terrible parenting.
Is awful. Why would you do that? Like
Yeah.
you have a highly dangerous virus locked around your daughter's neck, and then also I think throughout the story, William implants like some G-Virus embryo in.
Yeah, because like there's something about
Sherry?
There's something about how it's the G-Virus is mixing with his DNA, and the only way to make more baby G-Viruses is he has to implant into somebody else with his DNA.
Yeah,
Which is
again
rough.
bad parenting.
Yeah.
really stupid people here. I don't know where Racoon City CPS is, but they missed this one. So Sherry becomes a target on Claire's scenario, and then in parallel to this, if you're playing on Leon, he meets Ada Wong, who, we'll spoil it now. Later on, you find out she's sort of a spy who's also out there to get the G-Virus sample. And John, who we've talked about and mentioned in like the Resident Evil original game, like he's kind of mentioned these in the lore notes and whatnot. I think he works at Umbrella. He's like a researcher there.
He was just a scientist or something.
Yeah, so Annette ends up telling Claire and Leon that Ada is a spy. Don't trust her because she actually just got close to John to get closer to Umbrella. And that's an interesting twist there on itself, where Ada's like this, you know, she's sort of playing Leon. Like they have this moment towards the end where it's like they confess their love to each other, but it's also like, well, do I trust this? Because I just learned that you're a spy to get a virus, right? Because of course this game ends up in a lab, just like the first game. So that's all happening. And then as the game progresses, your whole mission objective now is to basically just survive and escape the city. So you go through like the sewers, there's a big part in the lab, and you get to like a sort of a train station. And we're skipping a lot because again, we go into crazy detail here, but
there are a lot of locations I forgot about.
There's a lot of locations in this game, and it's crazy because this game's only like, you know, if you were to go through it regularly, like I don't know what, 5 hours maybe. No, maybe 8 with cutscenes. I don't know. So there's a lot of story in there. That's why we're kind of being brief with this too.
There's a weird tram car like that you would think would take you up a mountain, but instead it goes laterally and into the what do you call it? The lab. Yes. I'm not entirely sure where this lab is because it's like supposedly underground, but also you take a tram car to get there.
Yeah, and you can escape into like almost like this desert at the end of the game.
Yeah.
So I totally forgot how the A scenario ends, but we kind of go into the B because that's technically sort of the canon ending.
The A is just the train tunnel blows up.
Okay, that's what it was.
And they are driving away on the train.
Okay, there it was, yeah.
That's the end of A, but then you realize, nope, there's still more happening on the train.
There's still more happening on the train because in the B scenario, that's when it introduces like Mr. X, who now pursues you. He's sort of like the bioweapon that's also supposed to basically eliminate any survivors and also take any virus samples back to Umbrella. And he just pursues, he's sort of like the prototype to Nemesis in Resident Evil 3. He's not as aggressive as Nemesis. He's also way slower, but he takes a lot of ammo to kill.
He doesn't talk.
He doesn't talk. He just
also
quietly pursues you.
He also doesn't use guns or weapons like Nemesis.
Yeah, he's just melee based.
Yep.
And he can't go through some doors. He goes through some, but obviously like save rooms are off limits. Like he came to there, so that's like your safe haven.
In the original game, all he does is he crashes through walls like the Kool-Aid Man.
Yes.
That's how they jump scare you in this game.
I think we probably mentioned the same thing back then, yeah. And then also, William Birkin, he has more transformations in the B scenario, and they just get more and more larger and more grotesque. And at the final one, so at this point, we should say in the B scenario, technically at this point, this is when like Leon, Claire, and Sherry are about to escape. That's when these all sort of going to get together. It's sort of the canon ending. And in the final battle, you fight a giant, just crazy monstrosity of William Birkin, who consumes the entire train car, more or less.
He's just a blob with like a spiral row of teeth in the middle.
He looks like the Sarlacc pits in Star Wars.
That's but sideways.
Yeah, but sideways and more I guess more skin and more amorphous. I don't know.
He's sort of sliding through the car like a slug.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you destroy him finally, which basically means that like you get off the train car and he ends up exploding with the train car.
That's a fun battle because it's just like take every good gun that you've been saving
and
throughout
just unload.
Yeah, throughout the entire game. You're like, yes, you are going to need every grenade round or every magnum round and just start shooting.
Yeah. And also, one thing I should notice before we finish with the story is that Annette, at some point in the game, does tell Claire that she can create a vaccine to stop the virus that's in Sherry. So there's that whole subplot there where you're making the vaccine in a lab. So there's a lot going on in this game. I know we spent a lot of time setting this up, but it's important to note this stuff because this game for us was so important. And like, there's so much story in here. And this is really what got us to fall in love with the series.
This is, I mean, kind of the start of the series, you might say. Like, if you play this one first, it tells you everything about Umbrella and about these viruses and these scientists, and then like Resident Evil 1 is definitely a prequel. Like, oh yeah, that just happened to happen over in the forest in the mountains.
Yeah, 2 months previous to all this too. It's very recent.
And also there was Resident Evil 0. That's a prequel to a prequel. It's weird. But like 2 is definitely where you can start and then go from there, and everything they reference when they talk about Racoon City is, it's from 2.
Yeah. And again, this also gives more weight to how big of a difference Sugimura made, because just based on how much we've been talking about the story, and I just want to dive into it so much, but there's just so much we could get into.
God, I wonder what their first draft was for 1.5, because
I wish there
was probably very surface level.
Yeah, like I would love to see like some design doc, or like if they had like a story plan, just to see like if someone archived it in some way, just to see what they initially thought, because obviously it's not gonna be finished, but just to see what their initial thoughts were and where they were going with it, because this is obviously drastically different, but this is so much more fleshed out than the story in 1 that I always thought this was like a parallel to Alien and Aliens, right? Where Alien 1 was a lot more sci-fi horror. It's a lot more atmospheric, quieter.
It was also isolated to the ship.
It was on the ship. Yeah. And then Aliens by James Cameron, like it definitely had the shades of James Cameron, sort of his, I don't want to call them tropes, but his sort of signature that he always had. A lot more action-packed, a lot more story, a lot more going on, a lot of stories and characters interweaving with each other, and that's what Resident Evil 2 is to me, where it's like
corrupt businesses and all that.
Yeah, there you go. Tale as old as time, right? But Resident Evil 2 is just in that same respect, where it just has all these sub characters and secondary characters that interweave into a story, because we even talk about characters like not Ben Foster. That's the actor.
That's an actual actor.
Yeah, I forgot what his name was in here. Is his name Ben Fong?
No, Ben Bertolucci or something.
Bertolucci.
Bertolucci, yeah.
That's what it was. You just had to tell me. I would remind it. I remember it. Yeah, Ben Bertolucci. He's a journalist who traps himself in a prison cell basically because he's like, this is the safest place I could be.
Yep.
And he's related to Leon's story in some way. You also meet Chief Irons and Claire's story, who's related to him. Chief Irons is like the corrupt police chief who's basically been hiding Umbrella's experiments and whatnot that have been going on.
He got on their payroll real quick.
Yeah, he didn't hesitate. One of the more crazier scenes in this game too, even when I was a kid, is when it's his daughter, right, who's on the table. Or who is that?
The mayor's daughter.
The mayor's daughter. Excuse me. Like I think she's like shot or bitten, just laying on his table, and this is where it's like it comes to him where he's like, yeah, I made some bad decisions in covering up for Umbrella because now this is a result of this.
Well, he's waiting for her to fully die, and then he's going to taxidermy her.
Oh, I don't remember that part.
Yeah.
Okay.
A
little bit of Ed Gein there.
He is the creepiest enemy in the entire series, I would say. It's like, God damn, this guy.
Yeah, he is rotten to the core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it gets worse in the remake. Like, they really make him out to be, I don't know if they were implying pedophilia or what, but he's like even worse in the remake.
I'm sure they tuned it up because they're like, this was rough for 1998, a little bit tame in 2019. So let's ramp Chief Irons up, and he does die. So at least there's that.
Yeah.
So that's the story that we've wrapped up in a nice little package, or as low as it can be, as sorts. So I guess we'll get into some reviews here, and then we'll get into the bits and pieces of the game that really make this shine more than anything else. So this was again a big game in 1998. And this also illustrates how good of a game it was in comparison to those as well, because there were so many big games, and this was one of the top reviewed games of the year, bar none. So EGM, I got a couple from EGM and GamePro like usual. EGM, issue 104, March 1998. These are all out of 10, so they gave it a 9.5, 9.5, a 9, 9.5. Best feature, the horror and suspense. Worst feature, somewhat awkward control. They said everything from the awesome graphics to the layout of the game is flawless. One reviewer said that they didn't like the first game, but they loved 2, and said every developer should take notice to see how a sequel is done. They said it was early contender for PlayStation Game of the Year. The only criticisms they have are really around poor menu system controls, which, the UI isn't fantastic. It's pretty much a copy of the first game, and there's 10 controls, so that's just by nature rough. But again, those are small nitpicks. They still absolutely love the game. One thing I noted here, which was kind of fun, is that this was Game of the Month, but it was tied with a game called Point Blank, which I don't know if you remember. It's a light gun. It's a light gun shooter with like a bunch of mini games.
What?
Yeah, it's
For-
fun
for PlayStation?
Yeah. They made 3 of them. I have part 3.
What the hell?
It's made by Namco. It's basically just like a light gun minigame shooter. It's actually pretty fun. But I was like, Game of the Month tied. What'd they give that? And they gave it 9.5, 9.5, 9, 9.5. They basically said like it was like one of the greatest liking games ever. And I was like, this game's really good, but I don't think I'd give it 9.5s out of 10.
I've never even heard of it.
I think, if you play it now,
30 years later.
Yeah, 30 years later, if you play it now, you'd be like, okay, well, this is kind of cool for the time. Also, we have to play it on a CRT because light guns don't work on new TVs. But I just thought it was interesting that, we have Resident Evil 2, which deserves the scores it got, and then Point Blank, which, again, is a great game, but I don't think it's, one of the best I've played in a while.
Also, this released in January, so Game of the Month might be for January or February, which is also slow time.
I guess it could be, too. Yeah. But it's you had Resident Evil 2 right there. You know, that should
Why
be Game
tie
of the
it?
Month. Yeah.
Why not just, make Resident Evil 2 the Game of the Month?
Yeah, it's funny. I just thought that was really interesting that was in there. Also, Final Fantasy Tactics got reviewed here. I forgot if that came out in 98 or not, but I just thought that was, again, another game to add to the list. GamePro, issue 114, March 1998. These are all out of 5. They gave graphics a 5, sound a 5, control 4.5, fun factor of 5. They said the game was bigger, meaner, and more violent than the first game, and it was worth the wait. They really love having 2 characters with 2 snares to play through, with the intense and atmospheric sound and music and the excellent graphics. The animations are much improved, and they, quote, sport superlative lifelike details that affect the gameplay, like limping after taking damage.
Oh, yeah. That was new this time.
It was. It's just, again, in context or relative to 2025, it's funny that that's what was considered sort of superlative lifelike detail was, I'm limping because they're originally going to do battle damage on the costumes.
Oh.
But they realized that was going to take more processing power, so they just relegated it to a limp, which I think is a good concession.
Also, it would look weird that, once you heal, there goes the damage.
Your clothes are back to normal. Yeah. Like you did laundry or something. Yeah. And they said that you're hooked the moment the game starts, and it's a better game than the original in every single way. So both these reviews, I think, are spot on. Minor note on the Point Blank thing, which I think is silly, but both reviews are spot on as far as the scoring for this game because, I didn't get other review scores, but they were just as, it got just as high as accolades as anything else. This is widely regarded as one of the greatest games ever, and I think that's a fair respect, even though, again, you could argue the perimeter backgrounds and tank controls don't age, but for the time, it was very significant.
Yeah, it looks a little funny now. Back on a CRT TV, the backgrounds and the characters kind of blended right into each other and looked great. And now,
it worked.
Now things really stand out because of the way the backgrounds look on an HD screen.
Yeah, there's a lot less hidden because of we have higher resolutions, so things are not as, like you said, sort of blended because of the nature of a CRT TV.
Yeah.
So let's get into the game bits, Deucy, because I know we've been talking a lot about this stuff here, but maybe we could talk about what our initial impressions were, any memories we have with this, because I know that I got this largely because my brother was a big horror fan. He was 9 years old at the time, which is funny. He probably shouldn't have been playing this to begin with, but he was in anything horror, and he, we'd played Resident Evil 1 a little bit before this. I'm not even sure if I finished it before I got to 2, but he got to pretty much when it released. I think it was one of the first few months, and the moment we played it, we were hooked, and then we got you into it. And I think this was a game we played for months after that, because once we realized all the unlockables and everything, it was just holy crap, there's a lot to do here.
This game was so big that when I would go over to your house and watch you guys play it, it didn't even matter that we played anything else that was 2-player. I would sit there and watch you play it, or we would hand off the controller if we died.
Yeah, that was our switching point. It was you take over now.
Yeah. But it didn't matter that it was a single-player game. It was all we wanted to play.
Yeah, I think this game does have a lot of fun moments, especially in the beginning when you're sort of being introduced to Racoon City in the RPD. I vividly remember being at your house, and our friend Mervin was playing at the time. And one of the first things you see when you get in, it's I don't know, when the first few rooms of RPD, you walk into this hallway, and then for a brief moment, you see something just scurry across the window, just crawling. Not even just like a zombie walking or anything, just something crawled across the window horizontally.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what the hell is that? I remember when that happened, Mervin and all of us just jumped.
Yeah.
We jumped, what was that? And then we found out, obviously, the moment you get through the door, you're introduced to one of the more cooler enemies in this game, the Licker, which is this bright red, it's on 4 legs kind of thing. It has these giant claws and a giant tongue. And it just comes down from the ceiling in a cool CG, pre-rendered CG scene. and then you have to fight this damn thing.
Yeah.
This probably would have been a boss in the first game, but this is just like a regular enemy in the original game, or Resident Evil 2, I should say, in the main game.
It replaced the hunters from the first game, which I didn't even know about because those aren't in Resident Evil 2 at all. Like playing this game first, I was like, oh yeah, lickers are the big bad thing. And then they never really came back in any other Resident Evils.
Yeah, I was surprised because they're definitely one of the more iconic enemies from 2.
Yeah.
And they really haven't made, I don't think they've actually formally made an appearance since then that I can recall. I have to go back and look.
Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Which is so weird because like hunters are in a lot of different ones. Tyrants are in a lot of different ones.
And hunters aren't even in this one either, which is interesting. But I guess it's technically because they're part of the T virus and not necessarily G virus.
And they were like also
Like
weapons.
mutated lizards or something.
They were built for fighting, and they were going to be sold off to like militaries and countries.
Oh
and stuff.
yeah.
Lickers, I think, were an accident. I'm not entirely sure, but like they don't have eyes anymore, and you don't really notice this in the first game because you're so scared and you immediately want to shoot. But if you walk slowly, they won't attack because they can't hear you technically, which comes across a lot easier in the remake because in the first game, every step you take is a loud step.
Yeah, you hear it. Like there's times where I just walk and I even if I'm not playing the game, I can hear that sound, the sound of the step.
Yeah,
it's just ingrained in my memory.
And you're thinking to yourself, there is no way that this thing does not hear that step.
Yeah,
but technically, a walk should be silent, and they just didn't differentiate back then.
The sound effect is purely that in this game. Like it's a sound effect. It's not necessarily indicative of, if you're walking in real life, you could, if you're walking normal speed, maybe you would be able to walk past this thing, but it's just sound effect is so loud that you're like, how is it not hearing me?
It's they also take the time with these like to make the steps different based on what you're walking on. If you're walking on metal, it sounds like metal. If you're walking on carpet, it gets a little muffled. But like running is what should be the loud part that will get a licker's attention. But like I said, as soon as that thing drops down, it like kind of curls up like a cat, like it's about to pounce on you, and you just like twitch reflex and you start shooting whatever you have in your hand.
And that's what ends up happening. And they're not even terribly difficult. It's just they move fast and they're low to the ground, so you just have to aim down at them.
Yeah.
Another thing with this game too, they definitely ramped up the enemy variety, and some of the spectacles are pretty crazy in here too. Like one of the biggest memories I have is when you're in the sewer and you fight a giant alligator. Like I mean, again, back then when you see a giant enemy, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
especially on a 3D system.
This thing didn't even look that zombie-ish. It was just a giant alligator.
Yeah, it's like if you just using a giant morpho ray on the damn thing, and it just consumes the entire area that you're in.
And fight is a loose definition because you just have to run and then like recreate the final scene from Jaws.
Yeah, it's really freaking cool though, because again, like at this point, it's not like you have a ton of weapons. You might have a shotgun, maybe definitely a handgun. And I don't know if you have anything else, but you're like, well, how am I supposed to kill this thing? And then you move up a little bit, basically have it chase you, and you sort of queue up these propane tank things. The alligator puts it in its mouth, and you shoot once, and it just completely obliterates its head. It's one of the coolest sort of we'll call it a boss fight, even though it's not really what it is. But it's just sort of like a set piece that gets your tension going because you're like, well, I'm being chased by a giant alligator, and when it does catch you, like it just it's like writhing around like an alligator would and just like tears you to pieces. It's really horrifying.
Yeah, that's a one hitter. Like even if you're on full green health, that is going to end you.
Yeah. So I want to talk about some of the ports. Oh, go ahead.
One of the other spectacles I was thinking of, one of the first things I remember is when you get down into the lab and you go into this one door because you're trying to get to a different floor, and there's just this giant tower of plant.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, it's pre-rendered with some little vines that are kind of wiggling, and you don't have to fight it or shoot it. There are other plant zombie monsters in the hallways, but this thing is just giant, and all they did was they just put it there as part of like telling you, hey, there's like
overgrowth here.
Yeah, there's a weird plant
by a virus
that got loose. Like if you played the first game, you remember fighting the plant monster, and it's happened again, but you don't have to fight it this time.
Is that? I guess we have to look. I don't even know if it's a thing, but is that plant? Is that maybe rooted towards like it goes through the city and like it's dispersing the virus? Is that a thing too potentially?
Maybe.
I don't know. I've never thought to look into that, but because I forgot about it.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Maybe that's too far looking into it. I don't know.
But I also want to know, like, why do they keep experimenting on plants?
Well, they do have. Maybe it's why. Maybe they figure it's like they could disperse like certain like mushrooms or something, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they could disperse the virus through the air or something. I have no idea. Like a Last of Us kind of thing or something.
Yeah.
I did want to get into some of the ports here because this was released a lot, and there's one that I'd like to talk about because it's a miracle port. That's pretty much what it is to me. So this game was ported many times, so much so that it was even ported in the same year. So this came out January 1998, and then they had a DualShock edition in November 1998. That really just means that they added Rumble. I think it added an arranged mode, right? Because that's also on the PSN version. And you found out that auto aim is turned off, which I didn't realize until you told me. I was like, I thought it was a menu option.
Yeah, no, it was like I was like I could have sworn, because I know in the original that wasn't an option at all. Like,
yeah, it was added in Director's Cut. I think.
You had to go old school with the aiming, but in this one I was like, this is DualShock. This has got to be like a feature, and then you have to go into the control settings and just go to like Type C or something,
and it'll say auto on, which is helpful because again, this is a tank game, so you don't have the most precise aiming, and that little bit of auto aim does help quite a bit.
Also, because of certain camera angles, you want to be able to just point at a zombie off screen.
Also very true, yeah, because you might be confined in some way, yeah. So this was ported to the PS1 again in November 1988, and then from there, they were supposed to port it on the Saturn system, which when I was a kid, I think I was surprised that it wasn't, but also I knew Saturn was on its way out because the last game I saw for Saturn released was in November 98, I think, towards the end of the year. But even by then, like at this point, the Saturn in the US, the support had been dwindling, and really the biggest reason they couldn't port it is because the Saturn hardware just wasn't able to do it. Like they just said that the hardware limitations just made it like a technical nightmare to port, and they said we just had to cancel it, which is unfortunate because this game is that great, but at the same time, I fully understand why it wouldn't run on the Saturn because this is also a 2-disc game, whether you remember or not. But it's 2 discs because they have Claire's disc and Leon's disc, which also is sort of an unintended value prop to people because they would put these games in 2 discs or more because that'd be like, oh, this game is so huge, so I get more bang for my buck, right? When really it's like, in this instance, I think they actually had to have 2 discs because I can't imagine they fit both on one.
Back in the day, the number of discs is kind of equivalent to saying how many hours a game is today.
It was, yeah.
Like, oh, this game is 60 hours. And back then we were like, oh, Final Fantasy VIII is 4 discs.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah.
Huge game. So this was also, so it was supposed to be ported to Saturn. It got canceled there. It was ported to Windows. It was ported to Dreamcast, GameCube, the Tiger Gamecom, which I still have. That version is just... to say it's a port is a loose definition. It's a recreation of a 3D game into sort of a Game Boy-esque system.
That's kind of a slap in the face to Sega because, like, oh, we can't put it on Saturn for technical reasons.
We'll put it on the Gamecom.
But here's the Gamecom version.
It's really awful. And then the version I kind of want to give some love to because I think this is one of the most software wizardry, most miracle software engineering thing ever. It's Resident Evil 2 on the Nintendo 64. So the N64 did not have, it really couldn't have a lot of games that were ported from CD-based systems because the cartridge just limited the format. Like it's limited on space. It wasn't very good for streaming like full motion video or anything like that. So most games on N64, if they were ports or multi-platform, they were trimmed down. Like I'll give one guilty pleasure example. It's like Mortal Kombat Mythology on PS1 has these really cool full motion video cutscenes with actual actors. And on N64, because of limitations, they're just like these static screens with text on them.
Another example from a game that people probably actually played was Tony Hawk. Like, on PS1, they had the full motion videos of actual skaters, and they had full songs when you were actually playing the game in levels. And then in N64, no full motion video, and the songs were on a shorter loop.
Yeah, they're only like 30 seconds long. Maybe. So again, that's sort of setting the table for how limited the N64 cartridge was because they somehow managed to fit 2 700 megabyte PS1 discs compressed to a 64 megabyte N64 cart while also retaining all the FMV cutscenes. Now, I remember renting this way back when, and then I eventually bought that rental copy when Blockbuster put it on sale. I'd like to get a complete copy just because it's Resident Evil 2, but I was blown away. Even then, I was like, wow, like, because then, like, I'd always been hoping for like certain games that you ported on N64 just because they would have better graphics naturally, but they never did. And this was just kind of mind-blowing for me to see. Like, the audio was definitely compressed. It sounded like it was in a hollow room.
Didn't they kind of smooth out the character models a little?
Yeah, the graphics were just noticeably better.
Yeah.
Just naturally, because the N64 was, a more powerful system, technically, outside of the CD stuff. But the graphics looked a little bit cleaner. Like, the backgrounds looked a little bit better. The character models looked a lot more smoother. I think I'd say a little bit more vibrant because they're smoother.
Nice.
Right? So they packed all those those 2 discs, all 4 scenarios, and they also added an EX files, which are some notes that also give context to things that were happening in Resident Evil 1, 3, and some Code Veronica, which is kind of crazy because this was also leading into that. One fun little tidbit I found is that the fingerprint pad password in Umbrella's lab in the PS1 version, the password is guest, but in N64 it's Nemesis, which again is sort of like a cool way to tie it to Resident Evil 3. And also the corpse of a hunter is in the lab, which is not on the PS1 version. They also added alternate costumes. They have Dolby surround sound. So in addition to the enhancements they added, they actually managed to add surround sound to this, which again is ridiculous. I don't know what the hell they did. It's really amazing. And on top of all that, they added an item randomizer mode, which, you know, foreign to us back then, very common now for speedrunners, where they have like a randomizer where it just sort of randomizes the placements of all the items in there.
That's what I've been really looking forward to. Like back in the day when I saw this being advertised on Nintendo Power and stuff, I was like, oh, that's cool and all, but usually the games were better on PlayStation because of those full motion videos and all that other stuff. And so I never really wanted to get this or even rent it on N64 because I already had it for the PlayStation. And then years later, I find out they had all this extra stuff and this randomizer thing, and I'm like, that is a great value.
Yeah. My brother and I remember we found some of the EX notes in there, but I don't think we knew it had an item randomizer. At least we didn't play with it because the arranged modes in Director's Cut, or Resident Evil 1 Director's Cut, and Resident Evil 2, that's sort of what they are. They're just sort of like a rearranged remix, like kind of like Master Quest and Zelda, where they change where items are, so it gives you sort of a new way to play. But a randomizer, I don't recall, at least from back then, any game that had something like that, like a full-on randomizer. It's pretty incredible. I don't know how random it is, but the fact that it's there is just an amazing sort of cherry on top of this whole thing. So the N64 port, well, you know, again, the original is very dated, but it's worth checking out. Modern Vintage Gamer did a whole video on it. He did the same thing. He said he called it like a miracle port, and he kind of went into the technical reasons of the technical solutions they had for compressing this game, because it's really amazing. Like I really think this is like a technical showcase.
Yeah.
Because nothing on the N64 was like this game at all. It may have been released a year later, but whoever studio this was, I wish I got their name. Oh, Angel Studio, excuse me. I'm not sure what else they had done, but the fact that they commissioned this and they nailed it is really incredible. So I think this port is just one of the more incredible things you play on N64, because you won't get any similar PS1 experience on N64 like this.
Oh, wow. They had help from Factor 5, which did a lot of like Rogue Squadron and stuff.
Yes, Factor 5 and also Capcom Production Studio 3. Yeah, so they had a little bit of collaboration here, and you know, it's like, it's one thing if they just ported it, they probably could have just done, you know, static screens for cutscenes or something.
Oh, that was a thing for N64.
Yeah, right. So imagine how different experience it was, but it's incredible that, and again, like it shows you how technology has advanced, but it's like they couldn't condense this to a Saturn, which was CD based and granted based on 1994 hardware, but N64 isn't that far removed. It's only a couple years newer, and they managed to fit it on a freaking cartridge. It's really incredible. And the reason I'm going out so much is because it just blows me away so much.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we could talk about the remake, because I want to talk about the zapping system, which we'll talk about with the remake as well,
yes.
right? Because we'll have some color for the zapping system. But the remake was announced, I think it was like summer 2018, I want to say, because I mentioned this story before. I forgot what episode it was, but I mentioned that I was on a work trip in Chicago, and I was coming home, and then I was like kind of, you know, I was in the airport just waiting for my flight or whatever, and I saw like the live stream going on and announced Devil May Cry 5, which almost made me crap my pants first. And then shortly after that, they showed Resident Evil 2 Remake. I was like, holy shit. And I texted you like right the moment that trailer drops, like, Deucy, they're doing it.
Yeah.
Because before this, we'd been hoping for Resident Evil 2 Remake. After all the years and all the other remakes that have come out, ports, HD remasters, this and that, we're like, what's going on with Resident Evil 2? And they finally announced in 2018.
Was this was after Resident Evil 7, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because Resident Evil 7 is the first game to use the new RE engine, which I love that engine. I found its pain point though, because it doesn't do so well with like massive open world games like Monster Hunter Wilds. There's a lot of people who are rightfully upset about how it performs there, but the RE engine for like these sort of I guess more not open world games, like more contained and like, you know, sort of focused. It's one of my favorite engines because it just looks so gorgeous. It has so much atmosphere. Resident Evil 7 is a great example of that. And the Resident Evil 2 Remake, I think, was very fortunate that it came after 7, because this also means that they're probably more comfortable with the engine and they could, you know, further refine things. Because this remake, you know, it's one of my favorites, frankly. It was released January 2019 for PS4, PC, and the Xbox One. It was eventually released on the Switch in November 2022, which sounds funny, but it's a cloud version, which I don't recommend buying or paying for.
Oh, God.
Because basically, if the servers go down or if you have no internet, you literally can't play this game.
Yeah.
And then it was further released on iPad, iOS, and Mac in December 2024, which Mac gaming, it's always been like that niche thing, but I think it's cool when they're releasing more games on it. It's just interesting that they're so, half a decade behind. But it's there if you do have Mac OS. They also released PS5 and Xbox Series X updates, which all look fantastic. I installed the PS5 upgrade last night, and I was like, wow, this looked amazing in 2019. It looks even better in 2025.
I'm trying to think. I must have played it since then.
I thought you had,
yeah.
but I can't fully remember.
Because I was also wondering about that on Resident Evil 3 when I was playing it. And I was like, no, 2020, I should have had like the more recent systems and everything and whatever they had for that by that time.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, it's worth replaying through now, especially because you played 2, but what's the next game you're doing now actually for Resident Evil? Are you doing another one?
I don't know yet.
It's still in plans. I was okay. If you could go back to Resident Evil 2 and play with the PS5 upgrade.
I do. I want to do the DLC for Resident Evil 8. I haven't done that yet.
Oh yeah, you should definitely check that.
Yeah.
It's brief, but it's short but sweet. It's only like 2 or 3 hours at most, I think. It's really good. So this remake, I would say, mostly faithful, and also add some things. I think the things they added, like there's certain sort of flow changes to the gameplay. Like even in the beginning RPG area, like you can't go meet the licker as soon as you can in the original game. Like you have to get the knife first, which you then open the power box to open the shutter to get through to find the liquor.
Well, they changed it up a little, kind of like when I was talking about the Dead Space remake.
Yes.
And they know the jump points, so they're going to have to change it up a little. Like, you go into the same hallway from the original, and now there's a couple more mutilated corpses, and you think this is where it's going to happen. And then it still doesn't. And you're like, oh, okay, now I have to be on my toes.
Yeah. So this is definitely a more refined version because, again, like when you're remaking a game, you have the benefit of looking what the original did, probably streamlining some things, maybe make some changes to like the puzzles or the flow of things. And I think this is obviously very successful. I should have gotten Metacritic scores. I'm sure it got like 9s and whatever.
What they did really well with this is like, it's got puzzles as all Resident Evils do, but they make a lot more sense than back in the day, when you're like, I need this medallion to go into this statue to have the statue drop a key.
Also, those keys, I don't know why, like it's because they're based on card suits, like they have the spade, heart, and whatever. I always like the look of them because again, I told you before, like there's certain like graphical effects I just like really like and really focus on.
Yeah,
and something about it, even in the remake where I was looking at I think it was the spade key. I was like, damn, like this has like a sheen to it that just looks really nice.
The fun part in the remake is that you can rotate it around like the original game.
Yeah.
But for some reason in Resident Evil 2, it was like the only one where if you examine something, it was only a picture. It didn't have you rotate it like
it wasn't a full model.
Yeah, like even Resident Evil 1 had you could turn things around and everything. So then in the remake, they let you do that because a lot of stuff you examine, sometimes you can like open a box or open a book and there's something inside. Exactly,
yeah. So they ramped that up, which I think also aids to the immersion as well, right? Like this is actually a city you're walking around in, or police station you're actually in. I think that those little things help because I was like, and this is me specifically, but it's like I always love finding lore notes or like little things like that where you might find something hidden if you inspect an item. Like it kind of gives context to, everything's supposed to be hidden in some way. Like whether it's Umbrella, the cops, or whatever in this game, there's usually something hidden because they're hiding like a pathway to something. So it gives a little bit more context when you have to look at an object and say, okay, well, there's something written on the back, or there's something hidden, like you said, in the page or something like that.
I was playing in Resident Evil 3. You visit the police station that's in 2, obviously, but you visit it as Carlos, so he doesn't know Racoon City very well or anything, and he gets to the spade door, and you don't have any of those keys in this game, and he just looks at the door. He goes, well, that's a weird ass door. Yeah.
Which they are. Like, why is the police station, which maybe is a carryover from it being a museum, maybe that's also sort of the context there too, is like this is a museum, so we didn't really, renovate as much as we could have. So we kept the spade door because that was charming and a little bit historical in some way. But it is funny, you said with Carlos, where it's like he has no context for what's going on. It's like, what the hell is this police station? No wonder they're all dead. They've locked themselves out of everything.
That is a very specific key. Not everybody has that key.
So the A scenario, I'd say it's really tight. It's really very much, I almost say 1-to-1 because, again, this is a reimagining, a reboot, but it does exactly what the original game did, which is give you a brand new experience that's different than what you've played before, while still maintaining the integrity and the originality of the original game.
What they did with this one, the reason it's so tight and everything, is because they want you to play through it, and then if you want, you can do the B scenario. But really, the A scenario has from start to finish. I believe you even fight the last William in that one, don't you? Or
I can't remember. It's been, I mean, I literally beat that in 2019 because I played right through it, so I can't fully recall.
The A scenario in this now has Mr. X chasing you around the police station.
Yeah.
And you even fight his tyrant form at one point, which...
Yes, I do remember that on the elevator.
Yeah, you don't do that. That shocked me when I was playing through this the first time. I had no spoilers. I didn't watch any streams. And all of a sudden he jumps down and he doesn't have his trench coat or anything. And I'm like, oh crap,
I was thrown off.
This wasn't supposed to happen yet.
Yeah, because while I don't fully remember, beat for beat scenario A and B, especially B, because I could probably recall A pretty easily if I just kind of like, seen something I was familiar with. But I was thrown off as well because the A scenario in this game really feels like it's sort of like a streamlined version of A and B. Like it doesn't totally carry everything over from B, because there is a B scenario that we'll talk about here in a minute and how it relates to zapping. But it's sort of like a more consolidated experience with A, where it's like this is the story beats from A and B in the original game consolidated into one game, so you kind of get the experience as it is. And then the B scenario here, it's a lot more difficult. Mr. X appears far more than he does on A scenario. He's also a lot tougher. And also the change with Mr. X in here is that he can go through pretty much any door. He'll chase you persistently, because in the other game, like there's certain points where it's like you could escape, whether you're going up certain stairs or something like that. Like he didn't like stairs apparently, like Ed 209. But
in this one, he just
he's just like stairs are no problem for me.
He climbs ladders in this one.
Yeah. So and that's why I would say like he is more of a threat in Resident Evil 2 than Nemesis was in 3, because Nemesis felt like it was so much easier and you have so many more tools. Here, I wish Nemesis in the Resident Evil 3 remake was more like Mr. X in the remake.
I will say though, Nemesis in the 3 remake is faster.
He is.
And if you think you can just like quick turn and run away, all of a sudden you're getting smacked in the back of the head.
Yeah, he can rush you, and he has more melee options. Like he's just, he's more modernized, so he's just naturally more nimble and everything like that. Whereas in OG3, you could find ways to cheese him and avoid him because he was so slow and clunky, but he still was hard to put down, and he appeared quite often, I thought.
And Mr. X in this one, in the remake, you can run away real quick, real easy. It's like Pepe Le Pew versus that cat.
Exactly, yeah. But still not bad, just less threatening, I would say. So the B scenario in here, frankly, I still have to finish this because it's been so long. I got stuck because I knew how hard it was going to be. Like I just knew right away. I was like, this is going to be more difficult because it wasn't super difficult, but it was definitely harder than I anticipated. And even with me conserving ammo as much as I can, like I was trying to do like some speedrunner stuff where it's like you shoot once maybe on the leg and run around them, right?
Or knife a lot.
Just anything to do to conserve ammo, and I still would run out. I was like, oh, this is rough. So I do need to finish it, but it is a much more smaller experience than the scenario B was in the original games. And I think, it was an effort they wanted because they thought that the scenario B in the original games were repetitive, which they are. Like if we distill and try to look at it objectively, like it really is just the same game with some things rearranged.
Well, if you've played Claire A, Claire B will be very similar, but with Mr. X now.
Yeah,
and she goes to a few different labs and stuff towards the end. But yeah, it is pretty repetitive. But if you've only played Leon A and then you go to Claire B, that's not repetitive. I don't feel like.
Well, I would say the environments are repetitive, but it's like. It's not its own separate game, right? Because it's still sort of the same exact game over, and you're still playing through the same locations. Some puzzles are different, so it's not like it's a totally different experience. It's just very similar, but it's not necessarily the same, right? So I could kind of see that a little bit, but that obviously didn't stop us back then because we played through this game so many times.
Yeah.
But I think they went a little bit too far in the extreme of consolidating scenario B in the remake because it's a lot shorter as well from what I've read, and the story isn't as fleshed out because again they've put so much in scenario A to fit stuff from B that B is sort of like things happening in parallel, but it's a little bit sort of like a briefer experience.
This is the nitpick I've had with it, and I think I've brought it up in other episodes. And this is why I would put like Resident Evil 4 remake above this one, is because the B scenario in this feels very chopped, very tacked on, like they weren't even planning to do it at first, and then it does not make sense narratively when you meet up. Like you only meet up with Claire maybe at the beginning, at once in the courtyard of the police station. She's behind a fence, and then at the very end she's on a TV screen while you're in the labs. Whereas in the other game it was like almost at once per act or so. And in this one now, like you don't meet up as much. And it just doesn't make sense when you're going through the same areas that Leon might have just gone through.
Yeah, it just feels like I don't want to say it's tacked on like you said, but it's like, it just feels like it's it's sort of like a DLC thing they could have added after the fact, but they included it in the main game, obviously. But it just feels like it's more of like a side story than anything else. Whereas in the first game, they intended for it to be as part of the main overarching story. And there's origins with this too, where this was an idea that Sugimura had come up. Again, Sugimura being like a big focal point of Resident Evil 2. He met with Kamiya about the zapping system because the idea originally was like they actually were supposedly inspired by Back to the Future 2, which I thought was a cool connection. I couldn't really verify that.
That's odd. How?
Well, because I think because in Back to the Future 2, right, you have two different versions. You have the tangent version where you're going to you have like the main story of Back to the Future 2, and then when Biff gets the almanac, right, it's sort of like a separate story. So it's almost like an alternate scenario you're going through where Marty's now having to loop back through time to sort of correct it. So this doesn't deal with time travel, but it deals with that same aspect where really it's like you're experiencing the story twice from different perspectives, right? Because you have the main timeline of Back to the Future 2 with Marty and Doc, and then you have the almanac twisted version of Biff.
And
so
then you also
and all those things connect together in some way.
You also travel. He travels back, and you're having like the end of Back to the Future 1.
Yeah.
In 2 again.
Yeah. So I didn't. You know, when I read that, it's like I couldn't verify it came from an interview. I'm sure maybe it did. It's just whatever source I had didn't have a link to it. But I could kind of see it. Like it's not like a one-to-one inspiration. But I could kind of see the parallels in the stories where it's like you have your main story. You divert into a tangent, which is what scenario B is, and that sort of meets up at the end with scenario A anyway, right? And that's kind of the idea they had it. And then, you know, the challenge was, well, how the hell do we do this? Because we have two separate stories we're trying to tell in one overarching story. And Sugimura said that once it was decided we'd redo everything, this is speaking to rebooting the entire game, I had a meeting with Kamiya, and it was at this point he really settled on the idea of the zapping system, I think. However, for a while, we didn't know how to make it work. Then I suggested that it should be possible to use the data on the memory card to link the stories together, and from there, we took off. To tell you the truth, I was actually opposed to the zapping system. I knew how much work it was going to be to weave together multiple narratives, but Kamiya went back down. This is what I want to do with Resident Evil 2. So again, Kamiya just on it with this game. He's like, I have a vision. We're going to execute it.
He's like, 2 means 2 stories.
2 stories, yeah. And also, of course, like I mentioned, this had a bunch of challenges where they're trying to figure out like how puzzles in A would affect B and vice versa. So they had to work that whole thing out. And I think
they didn't so much as you would think.
Yeah, which is fine. But also for me as a gamer, like I wouldn't be so upset if some things didn't perfectly match up. Because I acknowledge like how hard this must have been back then.
I think at like one point, you don't have to put the fire out on the helicopter. Like it will just happen because technically it happened in the A scenario. The only thing that really is affected from one to the other is when you're in the locker room and do you want to choose the little hip pouch for extra inventory or do you want to choose the submachine gun?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a strategy guide or anything, you can take both and then you screw yourself in the next scenario because you didn't even know that existed.
yeah. Which, trope of a game back then. It's like if you didn't have multiple save points, even it's funny when you text me, you're like, oh, I replayed Resident Evil 2 on PS5 and I didn't save, and then I had to start the whole game over. I was like,
that hurt.
And, PS5 version does have save states, but I don't think about those things sometimes. Like, I'm just used to using the same system in game. But that's why I told you, I was like, yeah, that's why I saved, because I remembered that pain when it's like, it's not a heavy backtrack. It's probably like 20 minutes, but it still stinks.
No, it was actually about 20 minutes. And then when you told me about the save states, I immediately was like, well, this helps your end ranking because in the game, they take into account how many times you save on the typewriter.
Yep, they do.
And I have not saved once on a typewriter
yet. Yeah. So you'll have a nearly A rank depending on how quickly you can be there.
And if you don't use first aid sprays, which I never did back then.
I think mostly because I couldn't find them. They were pretty sparse.
Yeah, and they gave you plenty of herbs.
Yeah. So the remake really did away with that whole zapping system. And I think that was one of the more defining things of the original was that zapping system. And again, like I could totally see how it could be just repetitive, but I don't care, frankly. Like I want to, I do wish that it was more fleshed out on the remake. I think that is one of the faults it has, because otherwise, like the remake for me, it's like one of my favorite remakes ever made. Just on the fact that it's a reboot of one of my favorite games ever made. I do wish that some of the decisions they made were changed a little bit because I do think it affects the overall story. But at the same time, it's like, with how they've crafted scenario A, I think it'd be really hard to do B because you revealed so much of the story in A that it's hard to do that whole zapping system with scenario B and vice versa. So I would say like in your respect, like you're right. It's almost like an afterthought in a sense because it's like, well, we're telling them most of the story in A. What are we going to do with scenario B? And now we've chopped it up in such a way that it's a much smaller experience, but it's still part of the experience. It just doesn't feel as impactful, I think, as the original game did because you did get a much broader story when you connected Leon A and Claire B or Claire A and Leon B back then.
You still do get to see all the different characters though that you wouldn't in just one scenario. Like Leon never deals with the police chief or Sherry, and then Claire never deals with Ben in the thing or Ada, obviously.
Yeah, so it retains some of the, it retains what it needed to for the original. It's like you said, it's just like a chopped up experience compared to B. It's almost like it's I think they do call it B or they call it New Run. I think it's New Run in here.
No,
Is
maybe
it B scenario?
I think it was still
what it
B.
was. Yeah, it just maybe I think on the save file it says like Claire B or something like that.
Yeah,
maybe, but it just feels like this might be the one thing that I wish they spent more time on. But at the same time, like I said, it's hard because how do you change what you did with scenario A when you've consolidated so much of the story into that, and now you're still trying to make scenario B because that's what people want, but you've chopped it up because you thought that the original was a little bit too repetitive. So it's a hard thing to negotiate. So I don't know what the answer would be.
Yeah,
but I'd say that's like the one sort of blemish on this remake because otherwise, like this is just a stellar remake through and through. Capcom is just, I was somehow been on fire ever since sort of that lull in like the 2010s. And like just about every game they've come out with, especially with the RE engine, it's been so freaking good.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't make me hate the thing as some people hate the Resident Evil 3 remake.
Yeah.
Like, I'm disappointed at the second part, but going through the first scenario is still fun. I think what helps is that they added so much to the extras. Like, you have a ton of different costume options. You even have the old
challenge systems in here. Yeah,
you have the old 98 looks. I think isn't there like a kind of a mercenaries run mode?
I think there's the mercenaries mode.
Yeah.
They called it extra battle in the original, which was on the Dreamcast port, where it's basically mercenaries mode.
Yeah.
We didn't get to talk about like the hunk mode either, like the hunk and tofu, because those are interesting bits too. I think those are also included in the remake as well. If I recall, I think I did hunk.
Yeah.
I can't remember, right?
Yeah, even tofu in 4K.
Yes. So we'll talk about that quickly here, but those are extra scenarios you can unlock in Resident Evil 2, and they're actually cool because they add a little bit of context to the story as well. Like the Fourth Survivor, the hunk one does. Yeah, Tofu's just a parody.
Tofu is weird.
Yeah, but
hilarious.
But they call it the Fourth Survivor in the Resident Evil 2 game. It's called, it's a short scenario where you play as this umbrella agent called Hunk. He's just like this guy in like a gas mask and all black tactical gear, and he's there to escape Racoon City with the G virus. So it's really short. It's probably like, I don't know, like
he's part of the team that attacked William.
Yeah, so in that cutscene when you see William getting pursued by the Umbrella tactical guys, he's one of them.
Yep.
That's how he gets the virus, and that's how you escape and step the scenario. So it's really cool that once you beat the game, you unlock this whole separate scenario that also adds a little bit of color and also something that was happening in parallel to the main story.
Didn't you have to get like an A rank or an S rank or something?
I don't know
in both scenarios because it was after the B.
You unlock it by getting one A rank and beating both scenarios. So you beat both, which frankly, of course, A is going to be a little bit easier to get an A rank scenario A.
Yeah, and
B you just have to finish. So it does force you to experience the full story before you get this sort of extra tidbit of the story, and then. Tofu Survivor. It's basically the same exact short scenario, but this is sort of the parry version of that, where you're playing as like a giant block of tofu, which
with only a knife,
which is the biggest joke. But there is unlockable tofu, which I don't remember doing in the original game. I can't remember.
What?
There's a few other tofus you can unlock. I don't know if it's only in the remake or the original.
Oh.
But he starts off with a knife, and then once you play through it, I don't know if you have to get different ranks or what, but there's one called flan, like the Mexican desserts.
I think this is in the remake.
Is it the remake?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's the remake then. But you can unlock flan tofu. He has like a minigun and a spark shot. There's a few other options, and they all have different loadouts. So it's just like a fun distraction from everything else. It's just like the same thing you play with Hunk. It's just you're playing as a giant slab of tofu with, I think he also has a Stars hat on.
Yeah, he has Jill's beret.
That's right, yeah. It's really stupidly silly, but again, it's just another unlockable to add to the game, which, it's just a fun distraction more than anything else.
He's, in the original, he's just this white block, and then as you get damaged, he doesn't limp, he just turns pink
he turns more red.
Yeah. And then in the remake, he really looks like tofu, almost disturbingly so.
Yeah, he's got a sheen and everything.
Sheen and jiggly, and
they got jiggle physics for tofu. It's really funny. Yeah. All right, Deucy, well, I think we might be at the end of our Resident Evil 2 episode here. It's been a great time revisiting this one here. But
God, we're gonna
what
need
else
to-
do we want to say on this?
We're gonna have to have a whole B episode.
I
just
know.
a
I was
B
gonna say, like, I
scenario.
feel like I kind of, I always say broad strokes in the story, but it's like we really could have deep dive even further than that. It's just we had so much to talk about for this game.
We covered the important bits like Resident Evil 1.5
Yeah,
and the N64.
Exactly. We went through all the things we liked about the remake and
Yeah.
didn't like and whatnot. So
I
think
still
we had a-
recommend the remake. Yeah.
You should definitely buy the remake. And it's funny because as of this recording, which hopefully by the time you hear this on October 31st, PSN, maybe, I'm sure Xbox probably has a similar sale, and maybe PC, but they basically have like all Resident Evil games for stupid dirt cheap. Like they're all $10 or under, which shocked me. Like they have the
5 and 6 were $5 each.
the original 5 and 6, which are HD versions of that, they're only $5 each. You can get the Resident Evil 2 remake on PS5 right now, like the PS5 version for $10. I think Resident Evil 7 is $8 or something. It's ridiculous how cheap they are. So if you want digital versions, they're dirt cheap. But we both highly recommend this. If you want to play Resident Evil 2 the original, the DualShock version's on PS Plus for like I think it's called, was it Essential or Premium? I think it's the highest tier.
Yeah, the ones where you
We
get
have all
to-
the classics.
Yeah, the throwbacks.
Yeah, and of course, it's, we mentioned it's been ported on everything else. The original, I have a lot of fondness for, and I'll always love it, even with it showing its age 28 years later.
Oh my God! When you first step into the police station and you hear that music again,
Oh god, that's all I need.
instantly
That's
transported
all I
back.
need. I'm back in 1998.
Yep.
It's really incredible. So, any final thoughts on Resident Evil 2? I know we talked at length, but I feel like for me, this is one of the most impactful games in my life. It's one of my most favorite ones. We bonded a lot over this game back in the day. Still bonding over it 28 years later.
Yeah. I don't know where else they can go with it. Like, I want to remake, not because of the B scenario, but just like I just want to play this game over and
Just
over
want to
and over
experience
again.
it all over
Yeah.
again. Yeah, just like we did back then. We beat this game a lot back then. Like my brother and I, and all three of us. Like I don't even know how many times we've played through this game. It feels like a lot because we were playing this for like months. This is like the only game were stuck on.
Yeah.
On top of the multiplayer stuff, of course. Yeah. But if you want to tell us about any of your love for Resident Evil or anything gaming, you can let us know by email at legiongamingpod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram at Legion Gaming Podcast, and a little bit on Blue Sky, where I kind of just throw stuff in the abyss and be a little bit of a shit disturber sometimes. We're at legiongamingpod.bsky.social. Do you see any final words for our friends who are branching off into Racoon City?
You have died.